In this video, I'm going to go over a few different options you have for how to organize your full term paper. So these are all saved also as PDFs, just without the verbal explanation, so you're welcome to just look at them that way. But if you want to hear me explain what all of these things represent, that's what this video is for. So your first two options that I'm going to go over keep the different sections of the paper in big blocks or chunks. So one option is you start with your audience analysis. That's kind of universal. So you do that first. You've already written that. It's all already together in one section. You just basically don't have to mess with it unless I told you to add things in the comments that I gave you. And then the next big block, another 2.5 to 3.5 pages, is where you go over the persuasive strategies. So those are your suggestions about things like, emotional appeal, speaking your audience's language, timing, all of those kinds of things go in that section. And then your third and final block of the body of your paper is where you go over your example arguments. There's a separate video to go into detail about what goes in that section, but this is just where you're giving the best arguments to use and then explaining why these are good choices for this audience. So if you organize this way, you just keep everything in that 2.5, 3.5 page block, and you just go from one section to the next section. You keep all of the information in that section together. And then you can also flip the order of the example arguments and persuasive strategies. You can actually choose to do the arguments after the audience analysis and then end with the discussion of persuasive strategies. It's like, now that I've given you some arguments, here are some ideas about how to do this well. So both of those options work for everyone regardless of the topic that you're using, how ideas might pair up. So a couple of other options. If your information works out this way, what you can do is you can either still keep your audience analysis all together at the beginning of the paper, so you basically keep it just like you've already got it, and then in the later section, you're going to alternate back and forth between the strategy and the argument. And so this works best if you find that for each strategy you're suggesting, you also have an argument you're suggesting that uses that strategy. So if you are using an emotional appeal as a strategy, you would say, okay, here's how emotional appeal works and why it's a good choice for this audience. And then here is an example argument or two that use emotional appeal. And then maybe you follow that up with logical appeal. Logical appeal will also be a good choice for this audience because of this. You explain how logical appeal works and how to do it, and then you give examples of logical arguments that are using that logical appeal. And you probably have somewhere along the lines of 3 to 4 persuasive strategies, and so then you also do 3 or 4 example arguments, and you want to alternate back and forth between them. So here's the strategy, here's the argument, and you just go back and forth between those until you get to your conclusion and recommended reading section. And then in rare cases, you might find that you can group all 3 of those ideas together. Like, you very neatly will have, here's a thing you want to know about the audience, here's a strategy that responds to that aspect of the audience, and then here is an argument that uses that strategy. I see this one the least just because it's really rare that everything lines up so that you can keep your paper kind of symmetrical and, rotate through those 3 topics over and over again. But if that does work for your topic, like if you find that you can break down your audience discussion like that and split it up and then respond to each thing with a strategy and an example argument, then by all means do this. The advantage of doing this is it's just keeping your focus on that idea of all of this information is meant to respond to what we know about the audience. It is fine if it does not work this way. This is just one of those options I want to throw out there as a possibility, because every once in a while I have a student who this works for them, and all of the topics break up this way and pair up so nicely. So know that is an option if you want, but it is totally fine to keep all of the 3 areas of discussion, the audience analysis, the persuasive strategies, and the example arguments. It's okay to keep those together and just keep them in big blocks. And then audience first, and then whichever you prefer next out of persuasive strategies and example arguments, and then the other one. So that hopefully will help you get a sense of the different options you have available to you as you're putting your final term paper together and writing your later sections.